Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the end of your day one for GCAP 2017. Thank you for coming. Today we're going to talk about developing success in the Unreal Engine. And as many of you may or may not know, Unreal Engine is an extremely powerful tool for making games, but it goes beyond making games as well. So we're going to touch on a few of those things. We're going to show you a bunch of video and do some talking, go through a little bit about the things that you can do with games within UE4, show you a little bit about what's going on in AR and VR, and then a little bit beyond of what you can do with Unreal Engine in enterprise, which are what we think of as all things that are non-games, including those things such as film and television. So that being said, get started. We've lost our sound. Okay, so that's a little piece of our sizzle reel that we showed this last year at GDC, just to give you an idea of all the different third-party projects that are being made with the Unreal Engine, as well as a couple of our internal projects. Forgot to introduce myself as well. My name is David Stelzer. I work out of the Seattle office for Epic Games, and I handle third-party licensing. So people who are interested in using the engine, I help to make sure that they have the tools and the resources that they need to get onboarded with the engine. Additionally, I want to introduce you guys to Chris Murphy. Chris, can you stand up real quick or wave? So Chris is your evangelist for this region, for Australia, New Zealand. Anything on the technical side that you guys might need, feel free to reach out to Chris. I'll have my contact information at the end of this, and we'll make sure that people have Chris's if they need it as well. So for those of you who aren't using the Unreal Engine, why should you be using UE4? It's really important to note that unlike some of the other game engines out there with Epic and UE4, Epic actually makes games. Other game engines may hire other folks to do some demos and things of that nature, but we really concentrate on making games. I'll go into a little bit about Unreal's past versus where we are today and what it looks like going forward. Talk about how UE4 is a complete tool set, less reliant on the marketplace than, say, what people are doing with other game engines. That being said, we do have a very robust marketplace. Talk a little bit about Blueprints, which is our visual coding system, as well as C++ versus C#. The flexibility of the engine, the fact that you get full source code right out of the box, the fact that it's free to develop, and what it looks like under our licensing models, including custom licensing. So as I mentioned, Epic actually makes games. This is a little snapshot of games that we actually have in the marketplace right now or are coming out very soon. Starting on the upper left, we have Paragon, which is our MOBA. Robo Recall, which was released on the Oculus Rift. Beautiful version of what an arcade shooter can look like in VR. Next to that, we have Fortnite. Fortnite you may have seen a lot of press on lately, and hopefully a lot of people in this room are playing it. We announced our Battle Royale version, which went free to play about 3 weeks ago now, and the game itself has been out just over 2 months and has already crossed the 11 million player mark at this point. Down at the bottom right, Unreal Tournament 4. Then we have 2 games coming out in mobile, either later this year or beginning of next year. First one called Battle Breakers, followed up by Spyjinx, which is a venture between us at Epic as well as J.J. Abrams. So talking about Unreal's early days versus what's going on today. So many people equate UE4 with it has to be AAA as the target. It has to have, it has to be only for high-end PC or console. It's definitely not for the web, for mobile, or any developing technology. You can only use it for shooters. It's hard to learn how to use, and it's really, really, really expensive. And, 10 years ago that may have been the case, 5 years ago that may have been the case. It's definitely not the case today. Today, you have games all over the place using UE4, including top games such as PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds and Rocket League. It's multi-platform, PC, web, VR, AR, mobile, and more. Anybody who was at PAX this year, Rocket League even had a demo that they were showing going to Nintendo Switch with Rocket League, and that's all being done in UE4, which is pretty amazing. It has a multi-genre framework, free sample content to get you started, and templates that help you get going from your first use. If you want to make a shooter game, you can do that. If you don't want to make a shooter game, we've got sample content to help you get started in other genres. It's easy to learn and easy to master, unlike some things that are easy to learn and hard to master. In addition, it's extremely customizable and flexible, and as I mentioned before, you get source code right out of the box. We have free options for licensing, meaning you don't pay us anything until you actually make money on the project that you're using UE4 for. In addition to that, if you're making games with UE4, there are no per-seat licenses. We've also become an enterprise leader with companies in automotive, entertainment, architectural visualization, and many more. We'll show you some demos of what we're doing in that space in a little bit. So as I mentioned, UE4 is a complete tool set. What do we mean by that? Well, Unreal comes with everything you need to build and everything you need to ship your game right out of the box. You can build without paying for additional plugins, or you can customize it as needed through our marketplace. Built in, you have things like the editors for UI, materials, animation, particles. You have scripting systems. You can build state machines, starter content, much, much more. I want to also focus a little bit on Blueprints, which is our visual scripting language. If anybody was in the talk just before, you saw that they relied on Blueprint for a number of things in their last game. Here, we have an example of one particular blueprint. What blueprints basically allow you to do is take areas that you want to build your game on with the designers doing most of the work, meaning that you're less reliant on engineers and your designers can iterate fast, do things quicker, and then pull the engineers in at the end when they need them. So as I said, it allows coders to deal with the big issues and artists to implement their visions. It unifies all the subsystems with one common visual coding language, and blueprints can be nativized, converted to C++, and machine code for best performance. So a lot of times what will happen is people will build in Blueprint, they'll get their prototyping done in Blueprint, they'll get the very high level design of what they want done in Blueprint, and then move those things over to the engineers to actually nativize those blueprints and make the performance actually optimized. That being said, Robo Recall, our VR game, was made almost entirely in blueprints. So that blueprint we saw before, this is what that actually does. So the player walks through, picks up a mesh component, queries the location of the pickup actor, the data is used into step 2, spawns a particle emitter at the location of the pickup, we destroy the pickup, etc., etc. So as you can see, this will allow somebody who has just basic knowledge of how to function in a design environment to actually implement what it is that they want to do without having to then go and explain that to a coder who can do it probably. This whole thing could probably be done by a coder in 1 or 2 lines of code, but it takes that coder away from doing something at a very high functioning level that they don't have to concentrate on in a designer element such as this. The magic of UE4 and C++ is that C++ is integrated with the Unreal Editor. Classes created in C++ can be subclassed and instantiated in the editor. Artists and designers can extend in blueprints, which will auto-convert to C++. And you can code at a high level. UE4 handles the hard stuff and removes many of the pain points of C++. So I want to go into an example of something that's being made right here in Australia. So this was a project that I fell in love with last year at PAX called The Artful Escape of Francis Vendetti. It's being made by a company called Beethoven and Dinosaur. The project's recently been signed to Annapurna Games. And in addition to that, they were also given a dev grant from Epic about this time last year I'll go a little bit more in detail what those dev grants mean, but give you a little taste of what this project looks like. That's a great example of a project that just really pops in a different kind of visual style than what you would expect in a typical UE4 game. In addition to that, we're doing a lot in mobile. Many people don't think of UE4 as something that they would use for mobile, but my favorite game right now, Solitarica, which I'm playing the crap out of, is an amazing version of what you can do with the animation systems. The game just flows really nicely, and it's very simple, but it really pops within UE4. Robot Unicorn Attack Forever we featured at GDC this last year, and there's more and more games coming out every month through mobile. And one of the things that I'm really excited about too is Oceanhorn 2, excuse me, which is also being brought out on iOS. I have a little piece of video to show you. I'm going to shorten what I actually have here just for our time constraints, but this is actual gameplay on iOS in UE4. And start to play. There we go. If anybody's played this game on Steam, the visuals are almost identical to what you would get on your PC here. So that game's reminding me a lot of Zelda. Again, you can see that this is something you wouldn't typically see on mobile, but it's pretty amazing the types of things that Oceanhorn is doing there. Even more amazing, the things that are coming out of Asia right now. So particularly in Korea, you have really, really high-end AAA mobile experiences starting to percolate. Lineage 2 is one of them that looks gorgeous. It's basically console quality games on mobile. But the one I want to show you a video of here is Blade 2, excuse me. Also with some in-game footage, some pre-rendered, but it'll give you a really good sense of what you can do with UE4 at a console quality level on mobile. This is all running in engine.
백년동안 날 여기에 가둬놓다니. 아메리카, 이제 쉴 수 있겠어.
It's pretty amazing stuff to think that that's actually running on an iOS or an Android-based device and not just crushing the device itself. It really is gorgeous, and it's pretty amazing, the stuff that's coming out of Asia. Shifting gears also to how you can be successful on the engine, Epic is really committed to showcasing what comes out of our community. So this is just a small example of some things. We have something called Epic Friday, where we like to showcase various licensees who are making pretty cool stuff on the engine. If any of you in the room are using the engine, or you're thinking about using the engine, you know, this is a really powerful tool for you guys, because we can get you in touch with our community managers. We love to see the projects that everybody's making. We love to showcase things like this, which leads me into as well. Here's a little showcase that we've also put out. This has been up on our website. We like to show this off as what the community is doing, and we update this all the time. Go back. It will come back. So all those projects are indie projects that we want to showcase all the cool things that our licensees are making. A lot of them look really high-end, really AAA in their quality, but that's just the ease of what the engine can do for you. And moving over into VR, and we'll talk a little bit about AR in the future there as well. So we put out a game called Robo Recall. As I mentioned, this was made almost entirely in blueprints, and it's been talked about with many of the people that I talk about as one of the best AAA examples of what you can do in VR. The game is incredibly fun. It's very fast-paced. It's very arcadey. It has a great sense of humor to it. I'll give you an example of what it looks like for anybody who hasn't played it, but it's not going to do it justice for what it will do for you in VR.
Say hello to the latest member of the Robo-Ready family. Presenting the TAL Series 9. Every bolt, every component has been meticulously designed. TAL will obey any command. It lives to serve.
Service.
We are now getting reports of such robot violence.
TAL features convenient transport handles,
Why did they add handles?
as well as easily replaceable parts,
Hey, I'm using that.
and is built from impact-resistant materials.
Booyah! Ah!
Trouble-free service is guaranteed by our Robo Recall program.
Ow, 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 ow. Like that. Ah! Robot heaven, I see it. Unstoppable.
Making your life better, one robot at a time.
So another great thing about Robo Recall is it is fully moddable, and you also have access to full source code on Robo Recall, so you can take apart anything in that game, put it back together how you want to, use the assets, see how we did things under the hood, so to speak. It's a really powerful tool to be able to have. Now I'm going to move over into AR.
Is Academy Award
So I'm going to show you a little bit about
Chief Creative Officer John Knoll.
what
John?
we did with Industrial Light and Magic. This was from a Worldwide Developers Conference with Apple. It's going to showcase a bit of what you can do with real-time rendering within the engine and AR. Sorry, excuse me. This is the demo of. I apologize. This is we're going to go into the WingNet demo. I don't know why it keeps jumping forward on me. Okay, getting back on track. Sorry. So we're going to talk about from the AR kit in Apple, as I mentioned. At WWDC, the first thing that they showed when they brought out the AR kit was a demo from Peter Jackson's company. This is an incredible, kind of blew my mind when I saw this the first time. Tabletop version of a game in AR, literally just holding the iPad on the table and the ability for the characters to move off the table, on the table, showing you a video of this game. Come back and apologize, I've lost it. I will find that later, or if you're interested in seeing that,
on the stage.
by all means, look up WingNut and Apple's AR kit, because the video from that is pretty incredible. Moving forward, though, I'm going to jump into Enterprise. So, as I mentioned before, Enterprise is basically all the things that we're doing with Epic outside of the games industry. So, we've talked about automotive, educational, architectural visualization, basically anything you can think of that you can do creatively with a game engine that is not a game itself. So whether you're an animator, visual effects artist, visualization specialist, or a design engineer, you can do things within the engine. Here's a little take on what people are doing in the enterprise space. Fortnite trailer that you saw out there too was there even though it's a game, because it was for real-time rendering. We actually put out a version of the Fortnite trailer that was real-time rendering. I like to show that off because it's I know this is a games conference, but it's a really good example, as I mentioned, about what you can do with a game engine as a tool. And for a lot of folks who are indie devs, sometimes if you have a great art pipeline, You've got really good people who are working with you. This is a really good way to keep the lights on and the doors open by using the game engine and your proficiencies in it to go find clientele that will give you other types of work for hire options while you're making your games. Some other great places where we're using the engine in enterprise is education. It's too long to show in here, but for everybody, I highly recommend taking a look at Field Trip to Mars. It's a great example of how the engine was used. Kids were brought onto a school bus. Each of these windows of the school bus had these screens that were calibrated to how fast the bus was going and gave the kids the impression that they were on Mars, and all the visuals were done in UE4. In addition to that, as I mentioned, we're doing a lot in film and television. We had a great announcement that was made back in March this year. For anybody who saw the last Star Wars movie and recognizes this character, K2SO, it was announced that many of the final pixels that wound up on screen for K2SO himself were rendered directly out of the engine, which is really, really cool. And so going back to the engine itself, as I mentioned, one of the more powerful things that you get here is you get free source code, full source code, free of charge, right out of the box. Depending on how you consume the engine, if you're using it on our free model, you have the option of doing that through GitHub, where you can have your source code and you have the ability to change up whatever you'd like to within the engine itself. It can be helpful for some folks. For some people, it's a little too advanced, but it is available to you right there. You get to keep your modifications to source, or you can issue those a pull request to Epic. Epic will vet your changes and publish them to all UE4 developers and possibly put your name in the credits if it's a worthy change there. And most importantly, as I mentioned first early on in here, it is free to get started developing with UE4. Go to unrealengine.com, download the engine, sign the EULA, and you're good to go. Under this free version, you get community-based support. Under the answer hubs, we have a very large community that's there to help you. If you want to start developing on consoles and you're an approved developer with, say, Sony under PS4 or Microsoft or Nintendo, we have additional code that we can open up to you to make that easier for you to get up and running on all the consoles. And most importantly, you pay nothing until you start to make money. So you can release your game having not paid anything for UE4. Once you start making money, it's a 5% gross that goes to Epic, and every quarter you get $3,000 royalty free, and that resets for you. We also do custom licensing. If that model isn't attractive to you, you can come and talk to me or give me an email at some point, and we have custom licensing terms that get you a little bit more advanced support and a little bit more of a touch with Epic to help you do things at a faster pace and at a higher level. What this does is it's really meant for serious developers who are going to ship high-level games. As I mentioned, it has more in-depth support. You get access to a closed support network rather than community-based support, and it allows for a little bit more of a flexibility on the royalties. And that's pretty much it for our presentation. This is my contact information if you'd like to get a hold of me. I'm also here for the rest of the week for GCAP as well as PAX. Happy to talk to any of you about the projects that you're working on. I'd love to hear about them. I'd love to see things that you're working on. And as I mentioned additionally, Chris Murphy is here. If you need any help on the technical side, he is chris.murphy@epicgames.com. And that being said, we have a little bit of time, so does anybody have any questions that I can answer? I know it's been a long day. See some yawning? No? Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much. As I mentioned, you'll be able to find me around. You'll see me wearing Epic t-shirt the rest of the week. Hope to talk to any of you who are interested in moving over to the engine or seeing the projects that you're currently working on. Thank you.